When a man wants to connect with God, I can think of no better way than with a glue stick, a pair of scissors, and a thirst for blood. G'day mate, and welcome to In the Back of My Head podcast episode 78. It's a creative journal where I ramble on about creativity, art, and whatever's in the back of my head. And if you get anything out of it, bloody brilliant. I hope that you do. I hope that this helps you on your creative journey in some capacity. I hope you find yourself inspired, motivated. Maybe this is a kick up the ass. Or maybe it's everything you don't want to do. Maybe you learn everything you don't want to be through me. Whatever you get out of it. My dudes, my guys. Scrapbooking always felt to me like childish. It's the something you did when you were a child, when you were a wee babe in primary school. We're talking glue sticks, we're talking scissors, safety scissors, at that. These can't be used as a weapon. You can't take out fellow toddlers with safety scissors. Not without a glint in your eye and a real sense of purpose. It's that and cheap magazines. Woman's Weekly. Chopping up women's weeklies and sticking to get together to create amalgamations of too many limbs and eyes. Notes that look like the mad writings of a kidnapper. But recently I came across a piece of collage, the more esteemed cousin of scrapbooking, that really got me actively thinking about collage and scrapbooking as an art form, but also as a pastime and as a way to actually engage your mind actively with art that you are both making and consuming, and in fact just reorganizing the human brain, your own brain, so that it is perhaps working more optimally in a more organized fashion. You can arrange your thoughts, you can find pathways, make connections that you didn't have once before. Scrapbooks actually used to be called something else. Through the Middle Ages and the Victorian era, people would keep what was called commonplace books, which is more actually just like collections of quotes, news clippings, bits and pieces, yada yada. Not too distant from what we would call a scrapbook. A scrapbook might have more illustrations and doodles and kind of your own pieces put in there. A commonplace book was more just a collection of things. A commonplace book was actually like the 30 Chrome tabs that you have currently open on your laptop, grinding away those fan blades as you as you burn what little power you have left. But we need those 30 Chrome tabs. We need ways of collating all the things that we are seeing and trying to build connections. I don't think Chrome tabs are really the way to go, but in the place of scrapbooks and commonplace books, perhaps it's all we've got left. And I'll talk more about kind of where I'm at the moment using different apps, because a myriad of apps have cropped up over the past 5-10 years perhaps or so that are there to fill that role of scrapbooking. And now starting to actively think about that, think about what roles are actually playing there for our brains. An example from that period, that Victorian time, was actually Susan B. Anthony, but don't be confused, Susan B. Susan. And Susan was one hell of an activist. She was a women's rights activist and an anti-slavery activist. She was a fascinating figure, worth looking up. There were some controversies, as there's always controversies, when you're looking at historical figures. But I actually came across her thanks to her scrapbooking, because she was used as an example when I was looking up the book that I'm talking about today, which I will get to. But she kept scrapbooks. She kept scrapbooks more in like collecting, again, newspaper articles and quotes, so that she can kind of formulate her political points, her political stances over a longer period of time in a more organized fashion. There's a big part of the way that she processed the world. Good on you, Susan. Perhaps we do the same now. Perhaps we do the same now with our algorithms, with our playlists, our saved videos, our saved podcasts, or what have you. We're collecting all these different things. However, I would argue that this is not a very transformative format. You are not interacting directly with these pieces. You are not building upon them and building those, again, connections, little pathways, the little red string that could again be the sign of a madman or the sign of someone on a breakthrough, which most madmen believe they are. When I was young, when I was a wee lad attacking other toddlers with safety scissors, I was collecting things. I like to collect things, both the limbs of my toddler enemies and also koalas. In Australia, you can buy these little clip-on koalas that are like trinkets, they are memorabilia, they are souvenirs for international tourists. But I fucking loved them, because who doesn't love koala? Well, me. I've gone on many a rant about how koalas are stupid, fucking chlamydia-infested, poison-eating dumbasses that I'm surprised are still alive at all. But that's beside the point. At this stage, I hadn't developed that visionary hot take on koalas. At the time, I was quite infatuated with them. I thought these little dudes are brilliant, and so I would collect little koala toys. I would also collect cicada shells. I had a good box of cicada shells. That was bloody brilliant. I collected magazines and clippings, much like scrapbooking. I don't think I actually did much scrapbooking. I would just collect the pieces. I would never actually put them down. I also had rocks, toys. I had several spatulas for some reason. And if you think these are signs of autism at a young age, I don't want to hear about it. I'll go to a doctor at some point. But the point is that at a very young age, I was a hoarder of things and ideas, perhaps. Perhaps these things all represented ideas, parts of my personality that I was trying to express, trying to discover. I would hoard them. I would gather them. I would collect them. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was obsessed with it. And then, when my parents got divorced, I threw all that shit out. I went super minimalist. It was a very active, immediate response that I just gathered a giant wheelie bin from out the front yard, pulled it around to my bedroom, and just started throwing shit out. Really cleaned it out, really started from scratch. And I haven't really thought about that for years. It's always kind of sat there in the back of my mind, like, that's an interesting response. I wonder what that was. I'll deal with that later. And since that time, I've kind of always lived as minimalist as possible. I've tried to throw stuff away as much as I can. But I just made this connection now, through COVID, that changed dramatically. COVID brought back my hoarding ways, but I wouldn't say hoarding in a way of like gathering things that have no value or no use, but rather just like trying to fill my space, the world around me, the little pocket that I inhabit, with stuff. And if you're watching this, then you can see behind me the wall that is just this giant collage now. And that's kind of representing where I'm trying to head with all this, is just anything I gather out there in the world that has any sort of significance to me, up it goes on the wall. And this is very simple. It's very simple. Everyone does this. But I feel a great emotional attachment to this wall now. I feel a great sense of inspiration from this wall now. This wall is starting to mean something more than just a collection of stuff that looks cool and a good background for these videos, but rather it also just represents trying to actually take in everything that I see and everything I experience and piece it together as one coherent thought, personality, a web of ideas and connections. Same to the apps that I was speaking of before, and I think this is why I'm now so drawn to this particular app that I'm using, and obviously not sponsored. I get so few views, under 20 views, so I'm not sponsored by no one, but I fucking love Millernote. Millernote has actually started to reshape my brain, has started to change the way that I connect things, has started to expand the way that I build projects. Because I am very immediate, I like to do things very quickly. I like to do big projects, especially when it comes to music. I like to do albums, or at least an EP, a collection of songs. And I kind of like them to be connected sonically and thematically, but I think when it came to actually building anything larger that required a lot of moving parts, or just a lot of time to actually piece together, then I really struggled. And now that I've started using Millernote, which is, I would say, essentially a scrapbooking app. It's called a whiteboard app. They call it a whiteboard app, but it's a scrapbook in my mind. Since I started collecting this, since I started using this to collect thoughts and ideas and scraps that I find on the internet, it has drastically changed the way that I operate as a creative. And I think you can really see it in this podcast. So I don't think this podcast would be taking the route it's now taken of like trying to actually uncover these little things that spark an interest in me and flesh them out further into actually full pieces. And I'm not saying it's particularly successful. I'm still working on this. I'm still learning this process of, well, for one, script writing. They're all dot points. It's not real scripts, but nonetheless, it's still a collection of ideas that has been pieced together over a few weeks and reading different articles, doing actual research. And I found this is a way that actually makes sense to my brain, is a very visual and interactive, ever-changing, living way of collating those ideas and those thoughts and those pieces. Milanote has changed the way I think about these big projects. This is all very exciting to me, maybe to you as well. Maybe it'll make you rethink about the way that you approach larger projects or just collecting ideas and thoughts. Because a big part of the reason why I make art in general is to contextualize my experience. I spoke about this on the last episode of the idea that, like, why do you make art? And it's just because you wake up every day and you look around the world and you go, whoa, what the fuck is all this? This is crazy. This is bonkers. I better do something about it. Make some art. Have a chat. Put something down. Put some thoughts down. But I think it's the way that I do it is very immediate. The way I do it is very reactionary in a sense, not in the political sense, not in that kind of content, but rather just the process itself is very much like see thing, say thing, cool, move on to the next. And now I'm trying to actually broaden those concepts and actually like sit on an idea, sit on a thought, sit on a concept and flesh it out good and proper. It's very easy to go the reactionary, quick way of making stuff, making art, making content when you have grown up on the internet. But it doesn't really give you enough time to truly flesh out and understand your emotions and your thoughts and your concepts that you are working with, that you are developing as you experience either just feet on the ground life or just living online and just consuming endless information and content. And the other thing is that it's very self-focused when you're that quick, when you're that reactionary. It's kind of hard to like go beyond yourself because yourself is all you know. Maybe, I don't know if that's entirely true, but I feel like this process now of writing scripts and using Milanote and using this back wall more as a scrapbook is helping me connect my work and my brain, my thoughts in general, to everything else around me. Connect it more actively and more succinctly to the art that I ingest and enjoy, and also just the history of creativity and the world around me. Where do I sit in all that? Where do you sit in all that? Because we don't make things on our own. Nothing we make is on its own. But the way we throw stuff out online kind of encourages that sensibility, that mentality. And so I think building these collections of supporting material behind every piece in a more tangible way helps you understand how you fit into things, how you get connected to, again, history and art around you. And hopefully as well, it just help you shape yourself as a human being. Because you're not by yourself. You're not operating as a lone unit. You're not operating as an individual. You're operating as a community. So you got to learn about that community. So where this all kicked off is from the Blood Book. I stumbled upon the Blood Book recently. This is a fascinating piece of art by someone who you would not expect to make it. Gonna go a little bit of a history lesson now about Newfoundland in Canada. John Bingley Garland was born in England in 1791, and then he moved to Newfoundland in Canada, where he ran the family fishing business from 1819. And over the course of his life, he was a successful businessman and a successful politician in that local area. Quite well regarded. His house is actually still a historical site that you can go visit if you go to that place. I'm sure it's dynamite. I'm sure it's fascinating. But accounts from his son's autobiography, he was a rather charismatic kind of guy, but with a rather quick temper. Sounds quite, typical of the times, I suppose. He says he wasn't violent, but he was very easily agitated, but he was very passionate. He would write, he would enjoy games that involved improvisation like charades and stuff like that. But a big factor was that he loved the church. He was a religious dude. Hey, weren't we all back in 1791, He was a deeply religious man. He didn't seem to have much involvement with the church, other than just going to church and saying, fuck, I love Jesus, every day. He went in there, every Sunday. He never missed a Sunday. He would go in there and say, fuck, I love Jesus. And he was not known to be an artist. He was not known to be a creative outside of those little party games and stuff like that. He would write a little bit, but mostly like letters and things like that, But then on his daughter's wedding day, he gifted her this book that he had made called The Blood Book. They don't call it the Blood Book in the family, but everyone else refers to it as the Blood Book outside of the family. And this Blood Book, if you're watching, you'll see some pictures of it on here, but it is an elaborate book of collage of these incredible, well-composed religious scenes. They're almost psychedelic. They're not trying to be realistic. They are quite dreamlike and imaginative. They feature romantic engravings. They feature flowers. They feature fruits and snakes. These are all drawings, clippings from various places that you would find them. Fruits and snakes being very strong themes, as well as butterflies. And handwritten script throughout the book, written by him, which references Catholic scripture. That's all well and good. It looks sick. It looks awesome. But the thing that elevates it, that grabbed everyone's attention who would ever lay their eyes on this thing, was the fact that large drops of blood, drawn in India ink, was on every page. Every page was drowning in blood. It was dripping from the birds and the butterflies and the figures from these religious scenes. But it wasn't supposed to be macabre. It was supposed to be in honor of Jesus Christ. Remember, fuck, I love Jesus. This was Jesus Christ's blood dripping all over this book. Looking on it now, and when I first saw it, I was like, whoa, this is crazy, and this looks awesome. I really like this piece. This is just a cool piece. But then what I found interesting about it was at the bottom of these articles I was reading, they would often reference the point that, like, given the time period that this was made in, like, to us, it looks like quite a striking piece of collage art. But at the time, there wasn't really much record that he would have ever seen any works like this, for there were no real works like this. This was getting pretty out there. I mean, there's always oil paintings and what have you from, earlier periods that were still quite striking and could be considered macabre to us, but as far as we can see, in terms of collage art, not so the case, and especially not super accessible to this dude. Again, based on these articles that I'm reading, and all references are below, yada yada. It seems this was more an act of scrapbooking, an elaborate scrapbooking, but this was more rooted in that mentality of, it's not trying to be transformative so much. It's just a collection. It's collating all of his favorite things about Jesus. These are all my favorite things about Jesus, including his blood showering every page of the book. There was a quote written on the first page of the book by him to his daughter, a legacy left in his lifetime for her future examination by her affectionate father. And when talked to about the book, his family later would say, our family doesn't refer to the Blood Book. We refer to it simply as Amy's gift. And in no way we see it as anything other than a precious reminder of the love of family and our Lord. According to the Garland family, it is full of symbols of both human and non-human crusaders and protectors of God and Christianity, and most of the verses, quotes, etc. are encouraging one to turn to God as our Savior. I keep referring to Catholicism and Christianity interchangeably because I don't really, in this particular case, I don't really give a shit. So sorry. So it could be a loose connection that I'm drawing here, but from these quotes, and the time period that it was made, and seemingly the purpose of the book, seems to have that root in scrapbooking rather than like transformative collage art. Though it is absolutely transformative collage art. But I found it a fascinating motive to make this piece, being that I want to feel closer to God. And so this is how I'm going to do it. It is a way of expanding the ideas beyond the book. It is about taking all these scattered thoughts that you experience as you listen to scripture and collate them into this elaborate, beautiful, incredible scrapbook / collage art. The beauty and the importance of this piece, of this book, is entirely tied to the creator's deep love for his God. My involvement with religion or experience with religion is very limited. Did not grow up in a religious family. I did not have many religious friends, but I have increasingly more religious friends as I get older. And so I can only really speak to how I've seen religion kind of online and from talking to people, but it doesn't seem to most like it would be something that you're actively expanding upon and studying. Though from my understanding, is that is something you absolutely should be doing. And I'm not saying, this is not what this is about. I'm not here to talk about religion really, but what I am here to talk about is the studying and the expanding upon the real exploration of these things that you are consuming, be it philosophy, be it religion, be it what have you. And I'm speaking only for myself in all of this. This might be obvious shit to you, especially if you have any background in academia or anything like that. If you have been someone who puts together large bits of research and essays, then I am speaking fucking baby talk. But this is centered around creativity and art, and I can speak to the way I create. And I spend a lot of time making art and consuming art and content and information online. I've realized, however, over the past maybe say 6 months to a year, how little time I spend actually studying the things that I'm consuming, really tearing them apart and analyzing them. I've gotten more into analysis, YouTube and stuff like that, but that's still other people's thoughts that I am taking in and going, yep, cool, that's how I think now. Good. I'm done thinking about that topic because I've done the video now. That's not how that works, mate. I'm trying to be more mindful of what I take in, but then I'm also trying to be more mindful of actually tearing it apart, recontextualizing it, and framing it through my own worldview window that is always expanding, always growing, always changing. And so I'm trying to incorporate more scrapbooking techniques, not necessarily physical scrapbooking itself. Maybe I'll get there. But being online, obviously, if you're online, then scrapbooking doesn't make as much sense because you have to print everything out. So that's no good. Also trees, but scrapbooking tendencies and mentalities, I want to incorporate that a lot more into the way that I process not only art, but just my life in general, which I think I'm starting to successfully do. But hopefully I'm on the path to being even better at it. So I was intrigued by that time period of Victorian era scrapbooking where most people had scrapbooks because they didn't have the save button on their phone, because they didn't have 30 Chrome tabs. Instead, they had these books that they would save their thoughts and things like that in. But again, it's a much more active way of interacting with your art and your consumption, be it a news article, be it what have you. In 1980, an author, E.W. Gurley, published a book called Scrapbooks and How to Make Them. Pretty self-explanatory, pretty straightforward, but there's some great quotes on this topic in there that I want to read. So these are all E.W. Gurley. We are all scrapbooks. We are all scrapbooks. And happy is he who has his pages systemized, whose clippings have been culled from sources of truth and purity, and who has them firmly pasted into his book. I reckon this guy likes rulers and clean cuts, like a nice scalpel cutting out those clippings. I appreciate the hell out of that. The helter-skelter scrapbook, made without rhyme or reason, with facts and fictions and poetry all pasted in just as they came to hand, is an unsightly affair and offends any well-ordered mind. Simply collecting isn't enough. Reorganization and, again, recontextualizing everything together is the journey you're on with this process, with a scrapbooking, be it Milanote, be it a physical book with glue sticks and safety scissors. I prefer a scalpel. He also wrote that scrapbookers would make more attentive readers because they were constantly looking for things to save. We read for a purpose, look for something, and keep it when found. Louisa May, a cult author of Little Women, claimed that her copious clippings had informed her novels. The habit of reading with a pair of scissors in my hand, I assume she didn't use safety scissors, she wrote, has stood me in a good stead for much of my literary work. It's active. It's active listening, it's active reading, it's active consuming. And I don't do nearly enough active consuming, which is ridiculous because I fill my days with hours and hours of what I would say is thoughtful content. Political content, creative content, yada yada, all kinds of different things that are there to stimulate the brain, try and help you grow as a person, as a creative, and just, as a member of society. And I'm not that active in it. I'm trying to incorporate as much as I can into this podcast, and this is a scrapbook. I've called this a journal, but this is also a scrapbook. I'm going to change my term. This is a scrapbook of a show. But that does make me happy, seeing all these video essays and people expanding on every little possible topic and extruding it out as much as they can, because that is active. That is a very active process. This is kind of giving me a vision of an inherent purpose to this kind of activity, but also the activity of this here back wall and the activity of using Milanote. But the activity of this podcast, or whatever you're doing, be a podcast, be a YouTube videos or anything like that, there is a chance to respond to the things that you consume in a much more deeply passionate way, in a much more thoughtful way that actually grows upon the original concept, actually wraps your head around it. Would you mind wrapping your head around a concept? I feel like there's a kind of a mentality, at least I feel, I've seen it expressed through others, that everyone's a fucking creator, everyone's putting out stuff. But art is part of a larger tapestry. If we consider scrapbooks possibly as art in any sort of form, or at least a creative pursuit, then so too is everybody and everyone's mum having a fucking podcast or a YouTube show. This is scrapbooking, this is active, this is community. This is taking everything that we see and developing further. And I want to focus on that now. I think I'm getting better at it, but I really want to push myself in that direction. That I want to focus on strengthening those strands, those connections between my work and others' work. And also the history, references. I want my references to be strong. I want to actually understand the shit that I'm talking about. I want to write as much as I can to respond to the art that I'm consuming. Because art is a community. It's a collective. There is no individual. We are a hive mind. And I like to embrace that as much as possible. And I think scrapbooking does that inherently. You must connect to the world around you, for you are part of the world around you. This felt a little scattered. They always do feel a little scattered. But if we consider it a scrapbook, then that seems only fitting. Or is that just a good excuse to make a subpar episode? I don't know. But I do want you to think about, how are you gathering your thoughts? How are you connecting to the wider world of creativity, politics, thoughts, philosophy, and not just consuming endless YouTube content like that I do, but rather engage with it, expand upon it, study it. How do you fit into all this? Hopefully there was some sense in there. If I'm just rambling on like a baby, this is all fucking dodoy, you know this shit, come on. You're better than this. You're better than me, that's for damn sure. This is like baby's first fucking art lesson with all Right Boy the Boy. I'm deeply sorry that I'm just spitting obvious facts at you. But if you got anything out of it, if you got anything out of this podcast at all, then bloody brilliant. I hope that you did. Check out Milanote. Or start sticking way more shit on your walls. Or start an actual scrapbook. And use safety scissors around toddlers. If you enjoy this podcast in any shape or form, please leave a like and a comment. Liking and commenting does give me those little, boost up into the algorithm some capacity. Because I know that YouTube knows that my channel is dead in the water. It's quite aware that, like, hey, no one's checking out your shit, so I'm not going to push it. So, hey, a couple of likes and comments would do me wonders, but ain't no bloody pressure, mate. These come out maybe fortnightly or whenever I bloody feel like it. I'll see you on the next one. I hope you enjoyed it. I love you very much. Keep making art. Keep scrapbooking. I can see you next time, mate.